2024 has been an interesting year of releases for KZ, and their latest TWS is no exception. The Carol are another ANC bud, this time with a stem, and they're priced at under £20, so even cheaper than the Xtra, which I reviewed on this channel not that long ago. The specs look pretty interesting as well. They've included a custom neodymium in-house dynamic driver and high performance DSP. You've got hybrid ANC of up to 55 dB using both feedback and feed forward mics, and those mics are also being used to give you environmental noise reduction on your calls. They've included other useful features like quick charge, multi-point and gaming mode, and their smoky but semi-transparent design is definitely going to catch the eye. Coming up in this review, you're going to see and hear whether the Carol live up to KZ's bold claims. You're going to actually be able to listen to what the buds sound like, courtesy of the wizardry that is binaural sound samples. You're also going to hear how effective the ANC is in a busy coffee shop, again with a binaural sample. We're going to put the mics to the tests in busy real life locations to hear how they really perform on your calls. Because take note, fellow reviewers, nobody makes phone calls while they're waving a fan around. And we're also going to see how they are for exercise, putting them through the stability test of 100 jumping jacks. But let's start with that binaural active noise cancellation sample. You're going to hear how it performs compared to some of its peers, including KZ Xtra, the new Moondrop Mocha, Earphones Air 2 NC and QCY's Melobuds Pro. So as you heard there, a very commendable performance when it comes to ANC strength from the Carol, especially when you consider it costs a lot less than those other models. Whilst its average noise reduction of 28 dB is slightly short of the QCY and Earfront at 30, it did deal better with higher frequency sounds. It may not have been a match for the Xtra with an average noise reduction of 36 dB, although do bear in mind these insert much deeper into your ear canal, which contributes to a large percentage of that overall noise reduction. I did get the odd pop when there was loud sudden noises nearby though, so be careful when you're putting your cutlery away. Whilst I've never really understood why anyone would want to use active noise cancellation in single mode, you can do that with the Carol. It means in the overall league table, which takes a little bit more into consideration than just average noise reduction in one scene, I'll test it out with lots of different scenes with different ear tips, the Carol sit comfortably within that top 20. The transparency mode is quite credible as well. I was able to hear conversations quite clearly around me, although you do hear a little bit of sibilance over your own voice, and there is some white noise there. But at this price, the aim of the game is that you're able to hear those conversations nearby, and it does at least fulfill that requirement. Whilst the Carol aren't going to win any awards when it comes to the ANC strength or the transparency mode, the price performance parity is excellent. For $25, both of these features are serviceable and will meet the needs of the average user. Before we move on to the sound, we've got another binaural sample coming up for you. This time a sound test so you can actually hear what the Carol sound like for yourself. So just a short clip there, but certainly long enough for you to hear that familiar KZ sound signature, which prioritises fun and energy over musical nuance. Looking back at the frequency response measurements, you can see what KZ were trying to do here with this V-shaped sound signature. They're so synonymous for, you've got loads of slam in the lower regions with particular focus on the mid bass. The lows aren't the most textured, but they're thick with plenty of slam. The treble extension balances well against the bass, giving you plenty of bite to percussive elements, although they can sound a little bit gravelly at times. The recession in the mid-range and particularly the dip under target in the presence region mean that female vocals don't really stand out. They do sit back a little bit from the mix, along with instruments which are set back even further to give those bass lines centre stage. Like most TWS and even to a degree IEMs up to that kind of $30 point, there isn't so much of a sound stage to speak of, and the imaging is fairly rudimentary, but instrument separation definitely holds its own in this price category. When you switch ANC off, there is a little bit of EQ shift, and for me it is for the better. There's less emphasis on the bass, and those trebles are notched a little bit as well. It just sounds a little bit more balanced and musical. The sound is very similar to their last release, the Xtra, with a few notable differences. Both are good budget bass headsets, but with the Xtra there's a bit more in the sub bass, whereas the Carol is more mid bass focused, so the Xtra can sound faster in those transients. The deeper treble extension and the way that the Carols sit in your ears compared to the Xtra, which is deeper fitting, means that there is a perceived wider soundstage, but technically the driver performance is about on par. If you're looking for a set of buds and your budget is in this $30 category, then there's no doubt that on your list you're also considering the likes of the QCY Melobuds Pro and the Moondrop Space Travel. How does the Carol sound in comparison to these? Let's start with the Melobuds Pro, a similarly mid-bassed focus set, but that bass is lighter, faster and punchier and doesn't bleed into the mids as much. Female vocals and instruments are more prominent, but the scaled back treble means that your higher frequency sounds can sound a little darker, at least on lower volumes. Instrument separation is slightly better on the Melobuds Pro, and they do of course benefit from app support and extensive customization through their EQ, something that KZ don't currently offer. If you like jazz or classical or anything with a focus on instruments, then the Moondrop Space Travel might be a better choice. From a tuning perspective, it practically hugs the Harman target, and everything sounds smoother and more balanced, with vocals again standing out. But aside that subjective tuning preference, the Carol has loads of advantages over the Space Travel, including much stronger ANC, much better battery life and a higher maximum volume. Looking at the overall league table of the buds that I've tested under £100, the Carol sneaks into the top 25 with a respectable performance, especially when you consider that along with the Moondrop Space Travel, this is the only one that you can pick up for under 20. For my viewers in the US, £20 works out around $26, $27. The audio performance though is very much dependent on the fit, and due to their shape, that isn't necessarily straightforward. As stem-based earbuds go, this is very heavy, very bulky and very thick. They combine this with larger than average oval-shaped nozzles similar to the Soundcore Liberty 4 NC, and as a result don't go deep inside your ear canals. This is fine for comfort, but not necessarily so good for stability. Whilst they did successfully pass the 100 jumping jacks test, I felt like they were going to fall out any moment from about the 10th rep onwards. If your ears are on the smaller side, you might find the Melobuds Pro or even KZ's Xtra to be a better fit. Even if the Carol do fit your ears, but you're still having problems with stability, I did at least find the perfect third-party tips for you to give you a bit more grippiness. The Feula H240 or H240 Plus were designed for the Huawei FreeBuds Pro, but they do fit the Carol and they improved sound, isolation and fit. I've left a link in the description. Ergonomics aside, the Carol do at least look the part with their clear smoky shell fully exposing the PCB. Both the case and the buds have some cool little LEDs with the KZ logo, although that front plastic unfortunately did scratch up pretty quickly. Next we're going to take a listen to how the mics perform. This is how your voice comes across when you've been able to reduce all of those ambient sounds around you. But what we really want to know is how it performs in real life scenarios. So coming up, you're going to hear how they sound in busy indoor
and busy outdoor scenes. So first off, we're going to test how the KZ Carol perform on your calls in a busy indoor scene. I'm in the same usual coffee shop that I'm in for all of my call sessions on the weekend, and you've got a mixture of groups of quite a few people in here, and there's just indistinct chatter that's going on as a result of them just sat around on tables nearby. You've got the sounds of the baristas making coffee and preparing food. You've also got music coming through the stereo. So what we're trying to replicate here is how it's going to perform in a typical busy indoor scene, whether it is a coffee shop or whether you're out in a shopping centre, a busy office, school corridor, college corridor, something like that. So first up, we're testing the KZ Carol, the thing there, in a busy outdoor scene. And what we're trying to replicate here is what they're going to sound like if you're making or taking a call on the daily commute. I'm right next to a main commuter station here in London, at London Bridge. And you've got a mixture, quite a bit of wind coming through. You've got traffic coming by, there's building work going on as well, although it has briefly stopped. And you've got sounds of trains coming through as well. So if you're looking to make or take a call on the daily commute with the KZ Carol, this is how they're going to sound.
As you heard there, whilst calls are certainly doable on the Carol, you don't get the kind of clarity that you would hope, especially when the scene is particularly busy. In that coffee shop scene, for example, where you had a lot of different frequency sounds, your voice just sounded a little bit soft and muffled. That performance is quite typical when it comes to a budget bud, where they can't quite get the noise reduction algorithm to adjust to suit your own voice. The only way round it is to use bone conduction mics, which puts the price right up. So if you are looking for something specifically for calls, unfortunately you're going to have to fork out a little bit more for something like the Huawei FreeBuds Pro 3 or the Samsung Galaxy Buds 3 Pro. The battery life is more respectable though, giving me around 6 hours with ANC switched off and just under 4.5 hours with ANC switched on. As I said in the intro though, it does give you quick charge, so 10 minutes in the case will give you 2 hours playtime, and the case gives you 6 additional charges, which is pretty impressive when you consider usually you might get 3 or 4. They do have multi-point connectivity, and this works pretty well and quite reliably. You have to switch Bluetooth off on your primary device and then initiate pairing on your secondary device and then switch it back on, and it has every time, touch wood, reconnected to that primary device successfully. At this price, as you would expect, there are some shortcomings, the biggest one being the lack of app support and what that takes away. It means if you don't like the default sound, you're restricted in your ability to customize it, which is especially frustrating for iOS users who don't have access to third-party EQs like Wavelet. It means that you can't customize the controls either, and the native control scheme doesn't allow you to adjust the volume, which might be a deal breaker for some. The latency for gaming in particular is pretty bad as well, getting absolutely nowhere near the 55 milliseconds that KZ claimed on my Sony Xperia 1. Even with gaming mode on, you're talking about 220 milliseconds. But those minor quibbles aside, if you're on a strict budget, the Carol is definitely a solid buy. They may lack the smooth and more refined sound of their competitors at this price, the QCY HT05 and the Moondrop Space Travel, but their ANC is much stronger and the maximum volume is higher than both of these models, especially the Space Travel. These are now my pick for the best ANC under $25, but you might need those favour tips to get the full benefit. What do you think of the Carol? Do leave your comments in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the review or you found it useful, remember to give it a like as well, especially if you appreciate those binaural ANC and sound samples. There's more coming after this short break. I'll be back very soon with a review of Moondrop's Mocha, Feels Key Pro, QCY's H3 Pro, and that big comparison of all of the semi-in-ear ANC buds that I promised a little while ago. I promise it is coming very soon. Thanks for watching. It's ReganCipher signing off.